Good morning, everyone in North America. And I guess if you're joining from Europe or anywhere else in the world, you're probably in the evening or towards the end of your day. Thank you very much for having us. And thanks for this opportunity to share our story as FYELABS. So before I begin with the rest of the slides, I wanted to set a little bit of context of why I started FYELABS. So I am Suvojit Ghosh. I go by Jit. I am a somewhat of a serial founder. I started my first company when I was working on my PhD at Virginia Tech in the US. That was a cooling system for computers using ferrofluids, which was part of my PhD project. That got acquired by another up-and-coming, faster-growing startup, which I became a co-founder of through the acquisition process, which was in the data center business. I exited that around 2018, 2019, early 2019, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. And that's when I started this venture, FYELABS. So what is FYELABS? As you can tell from my context, all of my previous startups have been in what people are starting to call the hard tech space, meaning it's not a software play. But unfortunately, in the world, if you know it, hold on one second. As you know it, most startups in the world tend to be software startups. I found this graphic in somewhere, and it kind of shows that like I've red circled the parts that would have some hardware components, but as you can probably tell, most of the software pursuits in the world don't have anything to do with things that might be hard. But that does not necessarily reflect what we need as a civilization to advance. So why are we doing this? And the simple answer is like somewhat of a myth, but there's people who would say this is an oversimplified explanation, but hardware is hard, meaning like developing anything that has that requires more than coding, where it does not have the same level of tools that you would have in pivoting or refactoring your product when you're doing a startup. So my mission in life when I started FYELABS has become such that we can create a tool set or a process for startups, no matter what you're trying to pursue, be as easy as developing a software startup. So why that? Let's take a step back to figure out the philosophy behind this. When you're trying to build a startup, you're trying to build a product, and a product is essentially a solution to a problem. So you identify someone who has a problem, and you provide your best solution to that problem. It does not define whether it's software, whether it's hardware, whether it's electronics, whether it's mechanical. You basically provide a problem that people are going to pay to go away. And if this was the way of looking at it, I think the entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout the world would tackle a large number of broader problems. Like if you go back to my first slide and look at these, like food, environment and energy, transportation, these are very big challenges that we face as a civilization today. But that does not reflect the number of entrepreneurial pursuits. This shouldn't be the case if we want to advance as a civilization in a way. So this is my humble effort at trying to do that. So what do we do at FYELABS? Well, like how did I structure this company? The way we operate is if you have a product idea or if you're trying to build any product, especially if it involves more than software development, we make it as simple as just writing down the requirements. You come to us, tell us what the requirements are, we'll figure out what it's going to take and just give you a price and a timeline. This kind of makes it as if we were an API for you in a way. You make an API call, we provide a price, and you send the requirements, we get it done. The way we do this is we have now built a team over the last 3 years of like a very cross-disciplinary team. Comprised of, we have our own software team, we have a team in algorithms that does AI, ML, machine vision, language algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. We have a robotics team, electronics and embedded systems, computational modeling, industrial design, et cetera. The whole point is to create ecosystem where you can throw any problem at it and it will come out with a solution. Now, there's obviously a few things missing. I haven't so far not been able to create anything in life sciences, chemicals, etc. That's because those are way more capital intensive than the ones you see on your screen right now. But my dream is to, as we grow, to expand on this. Like when we started, we just had software and industrial design. The next one that came in was AI ML. I think then out of sheer need, the robotics team came in. The robotics team's main concentration initially was sensors, and then we went into actuators. And when we realized that we had to do a lot of custom electronics anyway, we created a formal embedded systems team that can do PCB design, firmware, FPGAs, etc. We still don't do ASICs, for instance. And we also created a computational modeling to accelerate prototype testing and such. The way we operate is quite simple. So this is the slide that I typically use for marketing presentations. But what we do is we provide outsourced product development services, which as does like a million other dev shops in the world. But we do it in a very interdisciplinary way so that we are agnostic to what the technical needs. We look at it as a product. And the second thing that we do that most other providers don't want to do, obviously because it's very hard to do, is provide fixed price contracts. Combining these two, I think we can solve the major problems that we face that I presented in my first slide. Our customers are mainly early stage startups. These are the people at the most risk. That's why we, and also the most underserved. That's why we started there, pre-seed to Series A. Ideally, and then there is a secondary customer base that we are starting to develop. These are ambitious small and medium enterprises or small and medium businesses. Usually they've been in business for 20, 30, 40 years. Some of them are going through a generational shift because it's being inherited by the child of the original founder. Sometimes it's through an acquisition, but they're starting to realize that if they don't innovate, they're gonna be extinct very soon. So that I think counts for about 20 to 30% of our customer base. The rest are all startups. Journey so far, we've been doing this. I started this January 2021. So far, we have delivered about 165 products in various industries. We're industry agnostic so far, but if I looked at the concentration, about 20% would be in the healthcare arena. About 20 to 30% would be in the industrial automation or industry 4.0, like they say. Basically, hard problems that most other people or other dev shops don't want to solve because they involve careful integration of software with algorithms, with sensors, with robotics, with electronics, et cetera, et cetera. We do a fair bit also in agricultural technology. We have built quite a few robots, for instance, that do harvesting. If you're especially joining from the part of Canada I am in, agricultural labor shortages have been very acute for the last couple of years. So far we have grown our team we have 44 people on staff right now over 2 locations. Our main mothership is in Toronto, Canada, where I'm joining you from today, which is home for me. And then last summer we set up a second shop in LA and Culver City area. So how do we, because this conference has a lot of entrepreneurs. And many of you might have similar ideas or trying to create your own service business. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we find our customers, how we built our business, etc. So our main modes of finding our customers would be through events. We also do a fair bit of word of mouth promotions. Usually it's secondary. Our customers get other customers, but if you're trying to, especially if you're trying to consider a startup that would sell to other startups or other founders, you have to recognize that founders in general, and I've been like this my entire life pretty much, we are very heads down people. We focus on only things that require focus, and we're hyper aware in that narrow area. So traditional modes of marketing or B2B sales does not really work to founders. So we've done a lot of trial and error and figured out these two are probably the best way of acquiring new business. We show up at pretty much every reputable startup conference in the world, whether it's Collision. Well, we're focused in North America right now, so Collision or TechCrunch Disrupt, which is kind of like the OG of startup conferences, et cetera, et cetera. Now, how do we operate is another very important consideration. When I did my first startup, or in both my earlier startups, we worked with a lot of freelancers, and because we had to deal with like industrial design, electronics, mechanical design, and hiring full-time staff was sometimes out of the question in our early days. But the problem was, at any given time as the CTO or the technical lead, I was dealing with maybe 5-6 different people who we had 5-6 different contracts with, but they didn't like working with each other. And my headache was to make them sort of work with each other. I became the project or product manager in a way, and that to any founder is serious trouble, a serious management overhead. So when I started this, I was playing around with different business models, different operation models that might work. And we ended up in something like this, where we have a single point of contact for every customer who's the owner of the project from our side, call them the product manager. They usually have very good vertical knowledge, in the sense like if it's a project that would go in the medical space, they must have had exposure to the healthcare industry in the past. If we're tackling something in the educational technology space, it would be a former educator. With my co-founder, one of my co-founders is a former academic, so she is very good at that. And the other thing that we do is, because founders like to stay in the loop 24/7, we have our web application through which they can live track any project, whether it's like through a waterfall like Gantt chart view, because some of these projects have to run on specific deadlines, or whether it's a Kanban view. Now, another thing that super important, again, especially if you're a founder out there, that we always preach amongst our customers is we try to tackle most products in a few simplified stages. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The ones we typically do is start with a customer description, basically figure out the most potent value proposition that your product ideas could solve, or the other way around. Often it's better to get your value propositions inspired by a customer problem. Then go into a proof of concept phase, where basically you prove out the riskiest part. You answer the question, is it feasible to deliver the value proposition? Now, these are the questions that the product managers are going through with our customers while they develop the project. Next, we would go into a prototype. A prototype is basically a fully functional product, except it's not mass producible or ready for production or prime time. So it answers the question, does the product serve the value proposition? And finally, we would get into a minimum viable product. Now, people have different definitions of the minimum viable product, but here at FYELABS, I've developed a definition where an MVP is something that must be ready to sell. It's not a prototype. It's not a glorified prototype. So if it involves serious hardware, we would have manufacturing partners. We would have the supply chain fully figured out. If it doesn't have any hardware component, then we have the proper cloud infrastructure behind it that we have load tested, have the proper CI/CD pipelines, etc. But it also doesn't have any bells and whistles. So it's by definition the minimum set of features that can be sold to a customer. So it answers the question that, will my customer buy this product? Now, so what's next for us? We have been operating, like I said, for 3 years. We've grown a fair bit just by pure passive marketing and such, but my goal is to do a lot more than that, for us to be a household name, if there was to be one. And so next steps, we're focusing ourselves on the top 4 ecosystems in North America. We started with LA, because we had a fair bit of concentration of customers there, but we're going to not replicate ourselves exactly, but build physical presence in each one of these ecosystems. And so if you look at the dollar values, they look very promising, but these are just to identify concentrations for early stage funding, not necessarily what the market opportunity size is, because you'd recognize a big chunk of Series A funding actually goes towards developing sales, marketing, customer acquisition, etc., not towards product development. But it helps us identify where the customers are. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. So if you have any questions at all, I would love to take them now.